Hi everybody, it's Peter Stockdale, the host of the Spin Market Report. Are you looking for a new place to advertise your business? With over 85,000 YouTube impressions and 20,000 total streams across all platforms in the last 12 months, the Spin Market Podcast Network could be the prime space you've been looking for to advertise your business. Get a hold of Spin Market today and see what advertising on a podcast can do for you. Visit www.spinmarketwith2ks.com or email digitalagent@spinmarket.com for more information.
It's the Spin Market Report. Here's your host, Peter Stockdale.
Hey, what's up? We're back, everybody. Vickie Reeck is here with us, joining us, City of Fort Dodge Community Economic Development Director.
That's correct.
All right, so let's start off with a nice, easy one for people like me. What is your job description? What does it entail? What does a Community Economic Development Director do?
So basically my role is keeping all the projects moving forward. Every day it's something different. It might be trying to bring a new company to town. It might be creating an incentive development agreement. It might be working on rezoning a property. All the different things it takes to bring a company to town or to have an existing company expand. That's what we do. We try to be a one-stop shop.
So, what are some day-to-day activities? I remember you said rezoning. That was something I don't know why, it just made me think, how much rezoning do you have to do usually? I mean, it was before I realized that businesses had to be in a business-zoned area, are there a lot of times where you just kind of go to a residential area and somebody's running a business out of their garage, or how does that all work?
Well, sometimes they do, yes.
Oh,
and
really?
That's called a home occupation, but that's a different topic.
Okay.
But for zoning, we try to make sure that everything is compatible, so you don't have an industrial company right next to a housing subdivision.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, you want to make sure that they're all kind of categorized and put in different neighborhoods where they can thrive better.
Okay, that makes sense. So you don't want a mechanic making a lot of noise at 2 a.m. in a residential area. Okay.
Right,
All
yeah.
right.
Perfect.
So as far as your job goes, you named a few different things you do. What are some of the most rewarding aspects of your job?
I think when a project comes together at the end, economic development is such a slow process and it takes a lot of patience. But when you see the end result, like when I drive by Chick-fil-A now, it's like, okay, I had a little bit of part in that. And it's been a long time, but all the work that we've been doing for the past 5 years on this project are starting to come into fruition now.
Yeah, that mall sat empty for a while, didn't it? Before they finally tore it down and started redesigning it?
That, as well as, like she says, it takes a long time. I mean, there's things that are going on that people don't realize, and they get not patient enough to wait before that information can come out, because sometimes you just can't talk.
Right.
Yeah, I think some of that is also like we were talking about before the podcast. Sometimes the general public just doesn't understand how much things cost. It's not like you can just snap your fingers and come up with however many millions of dollars it costs to redo that,
Exactly.
I'm sure you have to apply for grants or things like that in certain situations, or maybe even vote on where the tax money is going to end up going when you have it dog-eared for certain things. It's like, all right, now what are we going to do with this?
Right. Yep.
Okay, so it's a difficult thing. It's a lot of people involved and a lot of paperwork, I'm assuming, too.
Yep. All of the above.
And a lot of logistic things. There's certain things that have to be done in certain orders in order to get whatever you want to do to get it accomplished. And so that's also difficult for people to understand.
Right. Yeah. We're constantly juggling a lot of balls.
Okay.
Hoping none of them fall.
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you face then?
So I think when I think about challenges, like I said, economic development is such a slow process, and it can take years for a project. And then it might just fall apart after you've worked on it for 3 years.
Ooh.
One of them that I can think of right now is the Warden Plaza. That's my project that I've been trying to get done for probably a decade. And a few years ago, we had a developer, and we worked with them for probably 3 years. I mean, going back and forth with meeting after meeting and working on incentives and applying for different grants, talking to the state, all these different things. And then one day it's like, okay, this isn't going to work out for us. So we're just done now. We're back at square one.
Well, that's rough.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you said you kind of try to make it so everyone's happy.
Right.
And it takes a lot, to make these deals happen when you're shuffling around, I'm assuming, a lot of money, you know, and it's like, well, where's it all going to go, and how are we going to make it so this is impactful and good for everyone involved? And then sometimes the window just starts to close a little faster than you think, and then you have to start over.
Yep.
And that's got to be difficult. So what are some key factors that drive economic growth then? Let's talk about that. I'm going to skip one question down on you, but you know, I mean, what are some of the things you look at when you're just like, we need to have some economic development in this area? What are some of the things that drive that?
So a lot of things are, we need a skilled workforce, and to have a skilled workforce, you need quality of life things in your town. So that's why we work so hard at trails and, you know, the aquatic center and getting them all redeveloped, because people don't want to live somewhere where there's nothing to do.
That's true.
And if they're not living here, then we don't have workforce. And if we don't have workforce, then the businesses won't come.
Okay. I mean, that's actually it's so black and white. It just makes it so simple when you say it like that, just a few sentences. And I guess that was funny. And that's one of those things when I was formulating these questions, I'm like, I really don't know how all this works. And in a couple sentences, you explained it pretty well.
And the same thing with housing choices. If they don't have the housing choices available when they come here to visit, they don't want to move here.
Yeah.
And so all of those things go into consideration when you're trying to do an economic development deal.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I know the trails in town, I've been, you know, doing a lot of rework on those, and they're looking amazing.
Yeah.
I've kind of made it like a little mini goal to walk the entirety of all the trails. I'm not even close. You know, I have to feel like I've walked a lot, you know, this last summer and fall. So
now you're gonna have to walk to Badger.
yeah. Well, let's get on. I might have to buy a bike. You never know.
Yeah.
So how does your role come into play here when we talk about, you know, economic development and growth? Like, how do you influence these things, or how do you attempt to kind of put your stamp on things so people understand that there are good things here, or we can bring some new stuff in?
Sure. I think sometimes we are our own worst enemies, and we talk down about our community, but one of the best things we can do is talk positively about our community. When we're working with a new developer, my goal is to have everybody they're going to need in the same room. So whether it's, you know, planning staff, whether it's engineering staff, you know, if they're going to be a high water user, you know, do we need those folks there? Do we need to talk about incentives at the same time, tax abatement? Anything that we think they're going to need, we try to make it a one-stop shop so that they're not, you know, calling a bunch of people. And if I don't know the answer, I'll at least point them to the right direction.
And everybody's hearing the same thing at the same time. And that makes a big impression.
Huge, yeah.
Huge impression for everybody.
Yeah, I'm sure that's one of those things when you start getting the meetings set up and you're like, okay, we got to get all these people in the same room. And especially if you're bringing in like an outside developer and they possibly have to fly in or drive in or come in from an adjacent area. And then you want to make sure that you're not have to be like, okay, we have to set up another meeting next month because I didn't know.
Yeah.
That would be so difficult to try to think of everything ahead of time, you know?
Yeah, and the last thing you want to say is, I don't know.
Oh, no.
But you can say, I don't know, but I will find someone.
Right.
So we're going to go back to a question I skipped, but it's, so we got long-term goals. Are most of the goals that you work on long-term? Are there any shorter-termed ones? Because I remember you'd mentioned maybe 3 to 5 years, sometimes up to a decade. Is there anything that's short-term in your line of work?
So I'd say things that come in every day are short-term, like we have short-term projects, but we try to have someone that is focused on the long-term goals. If you're not intentional about fulfilling your long-term goals, it gets mixed up with all the, you know, the mumbo jumbo, the daily stuff.
Lost in everything.
Yeah, because we get calls, you know, all day long, just questions about zoning or, you know, different things in our office. And if you get in that minutia, sometimes you don't get to the long-term goals. So we tried it. We have a comprehensive plan that we use that guides us. It's kind of our guidebook for development. So if we have somebody that wants to bring a business in, we look at the future land use and we say, okay, what does that say that area should be? Should it be housing? Should it be industrial? Should it be a business? What are the plans for that neighborhood? And then we also have neighborhood plans that are long-term plans where we are trying to redevelop a neighborhood like the Northwest River District.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that, I mean, obviously it's like, I don't know what the correct word I'm trying to think of is, but it's like you're delegating a lot of this stuff out, or you have a separation of duties instead of trying to put it all in one pile and work on it all at once. That's how you kind of
Right.
separate the long and short term
Right,
stuff from
yep.
one another.
Yep.
So what about collaboration? Do you collaborate with local businesses that are already here or residents in your line of work very much?
Absolutely. I think that's imperative because, the city and the government can't do everything. We have to have partners. We have to have local partners. We have to have citizens that have our back and are behind us. Projects can't just happen with a couple people. It takes the community being behind a project.
Absolutely. So like the community being involved, like how do you ensure in some way or shape or form that the community does have some sort of a say in this, or is involved at least a little bit in kind of the overall process?
Sure. I think one of the best ways is to attend your city council meetings or at least look at the agenda. We try to be extremely transparent. You can get any agenda item off our website. You can click on it, get the exact agenda item, exactly what they're voting on. You can come and ask questions. Every council meeting has at least 2 opportunities to have public comment. And so we try to be transparent there, and so that the public knows what's going on. We also do public meetings sometimes. If we're doing a neighborhood plan, we'll invite the whole neighborhood to come and give their input on what they'd like to see in the neighborhood or what they don't like or things like that.
Yeah. The like the city council meetings, kind of things like that, or the city, meetings that you have. I believe our producer for this episode was at one, not terribly much, shaking her head. Yes. Okay. So the one thing I was thinking of is like, let's say somebody maybe doesn't attend a city planning meeting or like a city council meeting of some sort. Is there like other ways you found to like kind of reach out to these people? Do you use social media at all or anything like that? Or
We do. We have a communications manager, and anything you need to know about anything is on our Facebook page or our website. She answers questions nonstop, day and night, of the community that post questions on Facebook.
awesome. I'll definitely have to get a link to that and put it down below in the description for sure.
Amanda Holmes.
Yeah, it's Amanda Holmes. Yes. Well, and what you're overall describing is understanding that everything you do is based on a vision that you have for the entire community
Right.
on there, because you can't just think about, okay, this would be a great place for a housing unit right now. You need to think about, okay, what is that area going to be like 50 years from now?
Right. Exactly.
So there is a lot of moving wheels, constantly looking at what do you want, where do you want to have these areas set up, and what is the future going to be for those areas?
Exactly. Yes.
So along those lines, what about if you have people with like differing perspectives then? So either like, you or somebody that you work closely with, if you kind of like, well, maybe we could do this or we could do that, then you take it to the community, and then maybe you have like a little community meeting, and maybe they're kind of split on it too. How do you navigate, some of those differing, viewpoints or priorities for an area?
That is a great question, and if I knew the answer, I'd be a millionaire probably. But no, there's always going to be differing opinions. We get the Chick-fil-A, and you see on Facebook, why didn't we get Popeyes?
Okay.
So there's always differing opinions on what I think we all have, what's best for the city at heart, but what that is different to each individual.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a balancing act. It's, convincing a neighborhood that this is a good thing. A lot of times when you are going to look at a multifamily housing subdivision, people, I don't want that in my neighborhood. I don't want, this in my neighborhood. And you just need to show them that it's a good thing and the positives behind it.
Yeah. I think some of that stuff is people directly on a face value might not see it as something good, but you have to convince them that in the grand scheme of things, it would be good for them. Like you said, it'd be good for the whole city, which in turn would be good for you as a single person living in this house or whatever, or your family living in this neighborhood. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's got to be very difficult though, because one of the things when I was like researching your job and kind of trying to figure out a set of questions here was like trying to make sure that it's inclusive for everybody. Are there ever, you said like the Popeyes and Chick-fil-A thing, but like, are there ever any situations where people feel like they might, not be benefiting from something, or like, how do you how do you go about doing that? Is it, I mean, are you using like a marketing tactic, I guess? Because I mean, it's just persuasion more than anything, but at the same time, you still have to like base it on facts. So like, how do you ensure that you kind of communicate to everyone like, yes, this is going to be a good thing? And is it you just kind of pull from past figures from other areas, or you kind of extrapolate your own data forward into the future?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the situation, but one of the scenarios I like to talk about at junior leadership, I present to them every year, and one of the things we talk about is the benefits of economic development. And I say, okay, let's say 4 of you are going to go get a pizza. 4 of you are going to contribute to the cost of the pizza, so that's about a fourth each. But if you bring in another friend, then you have 5 people to pay for the pizza. So then you're only going to pay a fifth of the pizza. Well, it's kind of like the city, the taxation. The more people you bring in, the less you have to pay yourself. So economic development benefits everyone. The more our tax base is, the less our levy rate has to be. So
It makes sense.
yeah.
I mean, the only downside of the pizza analogy would be you get a smaller slice
Yeah,
of
you
pizza.
might not get as much you want.
But I mean, like in the grand scheme of things, if we want to like break it out to something like city size, it's like I own this percent of the city, but if you bring in more people, the city's bigger, so your percentage is a little smaller, but you still live in the city.
But you can still use all the streets and the
100%. You can
Aquatic
use
center.
all the. I was just thinking the aquatic
Yeah.
center. You can use trails, Matt Cosgrove, the River's Edge Center.
Yeah.
So like, you can use all the amenities still. They're all still there.
so it's better than a pizza.
Yeah, 100%. Plus, I mean, like, that's one of those things where I also feel like, I mean, with the pizza analogy, it's like, well, maybe I don't like pepperoni, but it's like, well, they can have their pepperoni on your half. You can get something else. And we
Right.
have something over there on your half for you, if you want pineapple and ham or whatever. Not for me, please.
Yeah.
But I don't know who likes pineapple on pizza, but
Well, I think one of the things is a perfect illustration of what happens when you do get something accomplished would be the trails. Because I remember in the 2000s when they were really trying to ramp up the trails, there was a lot of pushback from the public.
Yeah.
And, why would we spend that kind of money on cement for people to walk on?
Exactly.
And now when it comes up, all you keep hearing is, oh, we love the trails. They're much more receptive because you see people on the trails. You see them walking the dog. You see them with the family, with the stroller, biking, all of those things on there, and constantly across all the trails, not just certain sections, and the fact that you can go anywhere. So that quality of life that we had to really push for is finally 20 years later
Yeah.
coming to fruition, and people are, it's a big draw for people to come here just to see the trails.
Yeah, one of the things that comes to mind when you talk about trails is when we did the corridors of commerce, and we put up the limestone pillars and the little fences and the street lights, and oh man, people went crazy that we're spending that money. Yeah. But if you look at a picture of what it looked like before, I have a before and after picture where all of the utilities are strewn across the streets and in the sky and just not inviting at all.
I think Terry Lutz took that picture.
Yes.
And driving down
Great
the street.
picture.
Yes, great picture that really illustrates how bad it looked.
Yeah.
Are you talking about Business 20?
Yes.
That was something that until I saw a before and after picture side by side, like, I guess it just passed me by when it happened. Like, I didn't really notice it before or after until I saw the before and after picture. I was like, holy moly, this did not look the same. And then you kind of remember like, oh yeah, there used to be power lines on everything. I mean, across the street and everything up there. And
So you really notice it now when you get out by Menards, where there are power lines
Right.
still. You see a huge difference. I mean, they're spread out more there than what they were on the Fifth Avenue South, where they did take them down, but it's still very evident that they're there
Yeah.
when you're driving.
And at the same time, we changed our zoning ordinance to so that you could not put up pole signs anymore. So
Okay.
we still have some that are there that are grandfathered in, but no new ones. I mean, before it was every business that came in had to have their sign higher than the last guy.
yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's bring them all down a little bit.
So you brought up a good point though, like Cheryl, where you mentioned how sometimes people might not look at some of these situations as a positive, and then 5 years down the road, they're like, actually, that was a good idea. Does that happen a fair amount with your position, or is it sometimes where you do something, you're like, man, we got a decent amount of pushback on this, but it got green lighted and it went through, and then 10 years later, hey, this is actually a great thing, and everyone, do you have any examples of things like that? Like you had mentioned Business 20 was an obvious one. Or,
yeah. I would say maybe Corridor Plaza, because we've had, quite a bit of pushback just because of how long it's taken. I mean, we started working with the developer in 2019. And, like Cheryl said, there's a lot of moving parts. We had to figure out how we're going to pay for them to acquire the building, tear it down, because they're not making a dime until something gets built back. I mean, all that demolition, they're not going to make any money off of that.
And COVID didn't help you either.
COVID did not help at all. So I think all the patience for that is starting to pay off now. I mean, now that we're seeing, okay, we have a Dunham's, we have a Chick-fil-A, we have a Pavilion coming, we have Teriyaki Madness, we have lots of good stores coming, and we have a lot more coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one of them, and we did get some pushback when the mall was still open. There was a handful of tenants still in there, and we worked with them to relocate them, or if anybody wanted to go out of business, we helped them with that. But honestly, the mall in its last year was earning about $114,000 a year in taxes, property taxes.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of taxes.
Yeah, but that's nothing compared to today. We're already gaining $420,000 a year off of the few things that have been developed in Corridor Plaza.
Oh, okay. So you can slice it up, and again, everyone can split a piece of the pie instead of trying to put it all in one big pot. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and there's still probably 2/3 of the area to develop yet that we're not collecting taxes on yet. So,
Well, and you bring up another good point. People are very visual.
yes,
And you can talk about the concept. You can draw all the pretty pictures you want, as I frequently say. But once they start seeing the dirt being moved, they start seeing walls going up, then the reality sets in much better. And so I can see now there is a momentum, because business A is looking to be close to business B, and vice versa. And so that always helps too on the recruiting side as well.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, when we were trying to get the Power Center open, which is the area that has Dunham's, Maurice's, and Shoe Sensation, and the fourth one that we can't identify, but there's an 8x8 sign of in the yard.
No, neat. Neat.
Yeah.
We'll have to go cruise past there.
So the four of those businesses, no one would sign until Dunham's signed.
Oh.
Because Dunham's is considered the anchor. And so we had to work hard to get Dunham's to sign so that the rest of them would sign. And so that's why it looks like nothing's going on, nothing's going on, nothing's going on. And then all of a sudden, okay, now we have four.
Yeah, now everything's going on.
Well, it is. It's part of strategy of businesses. There are certain ones that they want to be by. There's that draw in a certain demographic, and that's important to them. If that anchor is not there, then it's going to be more difficult for them. So then they've got to make some different strategic planning.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay, so I was going to say, how can you walk us through a recent development project that you've been involved with that had impact on the community? Did we talk about a decent amount of that in this last question that we just asked?
I think so. I just would point out also in Corridor Plaza, I mean, what we provide for the developer is what's called tax increment financing. And if you don't know what that is, that's the increase in taxes caused by a development.
Okay.
So looking at that mall area, I said they had $114,000 in taxes, and now they have $420,000. Well, the increment is the difference between those two. And so those funds can be used to incentivize the developer. So perhaps they would get some of those funds to maybe tear down the existing mall.
Okay.
But again, that's not given out unless that new project is developed.
Okay.
And generates the taxes. The other thing about that project is we applied for and received a community reinvestment district grant of $17 million, which is a lot like a TIF deal, but it's for sales tax. So all the additional sales tax that's generated in that area comes back to the city and can be reinvested in that particular project.
Oh, nice.
So they're long-term cash flows, but as each business opens and then they start creating sales tax, then we get four cents of every 7 cents.
Oh, nice. So it all, like most of it, it comes right back to us instead of, it goes to the state level usually,
Right.
wouldn't it? And then they split it back up. And then, so instead of doing it that way, it's kind of nice that you have these incentives, because these are things that, like, I guess I didn't know anything about, just being an average Joe walking in off the street, and that's another reason this podcast is great, is I can ask these questions and kind of get a little bit better idea of what exactly goes on behind the scenes.
Exactly.
So do you have any strategies that you use to attract new businesses or industries into the area? Like, let's say, for instance, a random company A comes in and they're like, we might want to build here. What do you have for us? Like, where do you even start to try to incentivize these people? Do you bring them around town and show them what we have for possible new employees that they're going to bring in? Or do you say, like, these are the areas we could have you build in? Or how do you go about that?
Sure. It's all marketing, just like any other business. We have to market the community. We had an event last week, a housing developer showcase, where we brought in housing developers and we showed them areas where we want housing developed, which is the Williams Bend area, where we have some development happening, but there's a whole 39 acres that's not been developed yet. The Northwest River District, which is 3rd Avenue Northwest, and other areas, other older buildings that maybe are vacant, like the Fair Oaks Middle School or Warden Plaza. We took them on a tour. We showed them, we had brochures for them. We said, these are the incentives we can provide. This is what our community has to offer, and basically just market to them just like you would anyone else.
Nice.
Well, and those businesses have those contractors that were there have a better concept once they see that they don't need to see a building there,
Right.
necessarily, because they understand how things are developed and how things are going. So just showing them that these are the potential things that are available is what you were doing at that event.
Showing that we're open, ready for development.
Yeah, shovel ready.
For business.
Oh, shovel ready. Nice. So is there like a balancing act you have to do between businesses that are already here and established and ones that you're trying to bring in? Or are you just looking to bring new businesses in?
Oh, absolutely not. Our local businesses are our bread and butter. We concentrate on our primary sector businesses. In fact, I think you met Dawn Larson a couple weeks ago. She's our economic development specialist. She makes it a point to meet with every primary sector company at least once a year, just to visit with them. How are things going? Are you having any struggles? Are you looking to do any expansions? How can we help? So we have our finger on that pulse all the time for our existing businesses, because we not only we need to keep them here and allow them to be able to grow. We also do the same thing with new businesses. We market just like anyone else would. We tell them the great things there are to do in Fort Dodge and why they should invest in our community.
All right. So you guys are kind of like a 1-2 punch there, you know, or maybe even a 1-2-3 punch, I again, this is another thing where I wondered how your job and her job overlapped, but it doesn't seem like they actually overlap almost at all. I mean, you're in the same area, but you kind of focus a little bit on two different things. And I mean, again, that was something when I was, going through and formulating some of these questions, I was like, I don't really know exactly the difference there, but you did a good job explaining it without me even really having to directly ask it. So that's good.
Well, those small to medium businesses that are local are critical for any of the other businesses to come in, because they have to have that support.
Exactly.
It also goes back to quality of life, because if a family is coming into town, there's certain businesses that they want to be able to see as well. So you're marketing to all those different areas, and each, just as we talk all about our digital marketing and our different platforms and everything, it's the same thing for this. Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's just making sure that you're covering all the different bases and you're marketing to those bases.
Yeah. And I think the Growth Alliance Concierge program, that's a prime example of marketing for our community. They're bringing in potential employees and their families, and they're showing them around town. They're finding out what their interests are, and showing them what we have in those areas. Showing them where they can build a house, where they can buy a house, where they can live, where they can rent. Showing them our school system and all the other amenities that we have.
We actually have somebody over here that did one, and they came here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Good job.
I mean, that's really fun. I like the analogy you gave where like we have all the different avenues we can kind of provide to people where it's like, websites or social media or like all the different types of marketing. And with you, it's no different where you're just like, we have a school system and we have, restaurants and we have entertainment and there's, different places you can go shopping for all your amenities. And I'm sure it goes all the way down. Like we have mechanics in town.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure it's everything. You guys, church systems or things like that, this job is a lot bigger than I thought it was, like when I just read it online. And it's one of those things where I don't think unless I sat down and talked to you, I would realize how involved this all actually is. I thought this would just be pretty cut and dry. It's like, we got land over here. We could put your company here. You'll make $1 million a year and everybody's happy. And it's like, it's not that easy.
No, if it was that easy, we wouldn't be in here having a podcast because we'd be sitting at Belize or some exotic place ourselves. But, the analogy between economic development and the marketing that we do here is exactly the same. And it also goes back to if the businesses in our community can provide that digital footprint out there of what they're doing, it helps your business a lot because we all know that those people that you are talking to are looking online to see what's going on and what's happening in our community and how our businesses are representing themselves.
Absolutely.
So what about like measuring success? I mean, you have all these different initiatives. Your plate is very full trying to balance everything, but how do you measure the success that, each initiative has? Or let's say, a company does come into town or an industry does move here or something like that. How do you measure the effects of all that after the fact?
Sure. Well, the easy answer is their CapEx investment, how much they're going to invest in our community. But it goes way deeper than that. If it's filling a need for our community, if they're creating jobs, they're increasing our tax base. Success might look at, like we were talking about, the Corridor Plaza area. Before we did all that, we had a consultant called the Retail Coach who looked at our community and looked at our spending habits, and they could see where we've spent our money and how much we spent on different categories like furniture, sporting goods, automobiles, and they could tell how much we could afford as a community for each of these categories. And then taking the difference, they could see how much was leaking out of our community.
Okay.
So it was crazy, but like for instance, sporting goods, it showed that we were spending about $400,000 a year on sporting goods equipment. And it showed that our community could support about $6 million in sporting goods. So that means $5.5 million is leaving our community every year. And, people are using their dollars in another community to buy sporting goods.
Okay. So that would, in theory, that'd be like somebody going online instead of purchasing something in town here or something like that, or going to Des Moines or something like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, then it also goes to the fact of being strategic so that you can go to Dunham's, which is a sporting goods, and say, all right, we already know that we sell around $400,000 worth of sporting goods here, but because of the community, because of the sport ideas or way that we're very sports oriented in this community, we can sell $6 million. So
it kind of puts the ball back in their court, though, too, because it's like we can do all this stuff, but some of that lies on you guys and your marketing and how you want to.
Right.
But I not that it's a plug for Dunham's again, but I did hear that the new Dunham's is like nicer than the old Dunham's, and I thought the old Dunham's was nice. So
yeah, it's bigger.
All right, so if you're
bigger and better.
All right, I definitely got to go check it out eventually. So so you mentioned a couple of the metrics like that are really important for that. Are there any other ones that we haven't mentioned that would be like good ways to just easily measure, how successful things are for the community?
I think economic development is awfully hard to measure. Because you're looking at quality of life things, you're looking at people that are making a major decision to move to your community, and you may not always know what exactly, tipped the scale for them.
I mean, like, it'd be like almost like, how do you measure happiness?
Right.
You can measure dollars in and out all day long, but
Exactly.
it's like it's not like we're just going around asking like, how happy are you today? On a scale of 1 to 10, or I mean, that'd be funny if we did that, but I don't know. Like, there's some of those metrics, like you mentioned, might be a little bit difficult to kind of measure and formulate and see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's not like a business that can make those determinations based on the number of dollars and profit that they have. There's emotional
Exactly.
part that it's hard to qualify, to put it into words, but it plays a huge part.
All right, so now we're down to what I think this is a fun question. What are some common misconceptions people have about economic development? I can tell you a half an hour ago, I had plenty of them, and you've educated me quite a bit. But what are some other common misconceptions people have?
That we can just call a company and say, could you come to Fort Dodge? And they come. Yeah, so we get, people say, oh, why don't we get this? Why don't we get a Texas Roadhouse? Why don't we get, whatever? We market ourselves, but there are certain demographics that certain businesses require, certain populations that we're just never going to get here because we don't have the population.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the misconceptions are like when somebody will complain about a new business coming, well, why do we have that? We don't need that. Why'd you let them come? Well, we don't have any control over somebody coming in and buying a plot of ground and building a new business and opening. If they think they're going to make money, they'll do it every day.
Yeah.
So all we can do is regulate, how they build. It's got to be certain materials in certain areas. It's got to be the correct zoning. We can regulate it that way, but we certainly can't regulate a free market.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that brings up a good point because I wonder how many people think that like every business that comes into town, you've like green lighted and checked off and said, yes, okay, we're going to build this gas station over here. We're
going to put a fourth Starbucks right here.
Yeah, exactly. That is really interesting though. I never really thought about it like that either, and again, you're even bringing up a misconception I didn't even have formulated in my own head and kind of explaining why it's, a misconception as for what it is.
Well, that doesn't mean that they're not potentially targeting and marketing to certain businesses out there, but you just really can't make the final decision as to who actually comes in.
Yeah, it's just like your business. You can't decide who's going to come in for your business.
Not always.
Oh, yeah.
We can't either. It's just, you do your best to market and put your best foot forward and show them everything you have to offer, and hopefully they'll make the right decision.
I mean, you also brought up a good point. Some places, businesses are looking for like a different demographic, whether it be like an age group that's in this demographic or whatever it happens to be. And the first thing I thought of when you said that was there's a couple businesses where it's like, I've only ever seen this company or this chain in like a major city with a university kind of deal,
right.
So like there's some of those where it's like, well, we do have Iowa Central, but they're looking for somewhere that has like 90,000 people going to it, like in Ames or something like that, or, in Iowa City, and that's one of the differences. That's why, that's probably why you see certain businesses in places like Ames and not even in Des Moines, because they're looking for something specific,
Exactly.
And that's why you're here, is to explain what we have and what we can offer them. I'm putting all the pieces together. By the end of this episode, I'll have it all down pat. So what resources or programs are available to businesses that are looking to grow and or expand in the area?
So the city we offer tax abatement and tax increment financing, which again was additional taxes generated by what you're developing. We also provide assistance with state programs. There's a lot of state programs out there that we help navigate through, get companies in contact with the right people, give them ideas of what's available out there. And we also try to make our government agencies as seamless as possible. That's a big thing that people look for when they're coming to a community. How hard is it for me to do business there?
Another thing I never even thought of, the, untechnical term for that would be like red tape, I'm assuming. They want to see like how much they're going to have to try to plod through to get to their end goal. That makes a lot of sense though too.
Yeah. So that's where they need to have each of the different facets of the city government working together and having some knowledge across the board, because there's nothing worse than getting through one department and then having to go to the next one and then finding out, oh, well, you didn't do this in that department.
That'd be now you have to backtrack
Right.
and redo the paperwork. That'd be so tough. It'd be so tedious.
Yeah, here's your building permit, and oh, by the way, it's not zoned properly, so you're not going to be able to use that.
Right.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Thank you for paying for the permit, but no, you're not going to be able to build.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, this is a lot of stuff that I've never thought of because, I've never owned a big business that's moved into a city, so I don't know these things. But so let's go down to the next one. Like, in your opinion, what are the most important factors for local businesses that they need to thrive in this area?
First of all, they need the community support, a strong customer base. Like I said, shopping locally, that helps everybody. We need to have a favorable business environment, like I said, cut out the red tape, make it easy to do business here, have government and community support for your business and the workforce. I think those are the main things that we want to see. We need to have infrastructure in place, utilities. We talked about internet, Fort Dodge Fiber. We had to make our own broadband so that we could provide what we needed for
Making
internet.
sure it was consistent throughout the entire community.
Yeah, because that was something else I didn't realize until we brought in WCCTA to talk about how all that stuff is set up. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that, like your big box company comes in and it's like they might have really good service to this portion of the city, but not that portion. And so that's where they were kind of like, all right, let's fill it out and make it better for everybody. So how does your role contribute to, making sure that there's, enough here for every company to survive and thrive?
Yeah, it's a juggling act, again, because there's limited resources, as every company has limited resources, and we try to provide incentives where we can and where we think we'll get the most value for the community, most bang for your buck, I guess you'd say. We try to eliminate barriers that would keep people from coming to our community, such as zoning restrictions or other administrative burdens, and just try to make it business friendly and make the environment appealing for any business to come in.
That's awesome. This has really been enlightening for me, honestly. I mean, your job is basically to streamline everything from a government standpoint to make it so businesses and the community can live in harmony in a place that can grow.
Great place to live, work, and play.
I love it. I love it so much. I got one more question for you. I tend to ask everyone this question, and it's fun because it's always kind of an oddball question depending on what line of work you're in. But can you name a time in your life when marketing impacted you and you possibly didn't even realize it? Maybe not even with your job, but just in general.
Well, I think I realized this the other day. I should have known a long time ago, but they're always marketing food during football games.
That's awesome.
We talked about this on
I'm
the
hungry,
podcast.
and I'm not hungry, but I want something. I want a snack. So then we go get a snack, and it's like, I didn't really even want that. Why did I do that?
Yeah, it's really fun when companies join forces. So like your Pepsi, Frito-Lay, like I don't know if they're like all under one umbrella to an extent, and they're like, well, now I want chips and soda instead of somebody just being like, how about you want some chips or whatever? Or, they're really kind of tying a lot of the like delivery services, like, I almost don't want to name them, but like Uber Eats, DoorDash, things like that, like they're trying to be like, hey, we can just drive it right to your door. And there's so many times where I was thinking to myself, like, I kind of want to go do this. And I'm like, I'll just pause the TV and drive across town and do it. It's fine. I'll do it. But they still got me with the food advertisements. So they still got me. And I don't know. It used to be the one I would bring up a lot was ice cream. Every time I saw ice cream on TV, I'm like, ooh, that looks good.
Yeah.
Let's go to DQ, or whatever it happened to be. So yeah, that's a fun one too, because marketing's everywhere. I mean, you had mentioned even in your job, you do marketing, as far as marketing a city to a company, which is like a form of marketing I never would have even thought about until I started kind of, interviewing people that were in positions somewhat like yours or that worked for the city, or economic development in some capacity. So this was really, really eye-opening. Is there anything I didn't mention in this that you kind of want to get out there to the public?
Well, I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot. We not only market to businesses, but we market to people. We say, come live in our community. We're a great community. We have great people. And like I said earlier, we can be our best advertisement or our worst advertisement. So, just remember that when you're talking to potential people that might live here or invest in our community. We always want to put our best foot forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Vickie, thank you very much for coming on and joining us. I'll put links down below to all the social media. So if anybody's looking for anything that has anything to do with the city of Fort Dodge, I'll put it down there. You can find it. I believe we also had, we were talking earlier about there was a place where people can kind of contact the city and get some answers if they needed to.
Yes.
Maybe a social media link or two for that. I'll hunt those down and we'll talk about it after the episode, and I'll get those down there for everybody too. If they're looking for something, there's the places to find it.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Vickie.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for all you do, Vickie.
You're
Thank
welcome.
This podcast is produced by Spin Market and Digital. Located in Fort Dodge, Iowa, Spin Market's highly skilled team can help you increase your market by updating your website, improving SEO, designing advertisements, and producing podcasts that will grab the attention of your market. Contact Spin Market today for all your digital marketing needs at digitalagent@spinmarket.com or call us at 515-302-8026. And to learn more, visit our website at www.spinmarket.com. That's digitalagent@spinmarket.com or 515-302-8026. Or visit our website at www.spinmarket.com.